In the middle of a packed Atlanta reunion stage, the air thick with tension and flashing cameras, Rasheeda froze mid-sentence, her eyes narrowing into slits as Yandy leaned forward with that sly, knowing smile. "You really think you know your husband?" Yandy's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Because I've been holding on to something that's about to blow your whole marriage apart." Rasheeda's hand slammed down on the table so hard the microphones jumped. "What the hell did you just say to me?" Her voice cracked with raw fury, years of pent-up frustration exploding right there in front of the entire cast. Kirk sat beside her, face drained of color, already reaching for her arm, but she yanked away like his touch burned. The room went dead quiet, then erupted. Yandy didn't flinch. She dropped the bomb without blinking. "Kirk's been keeping secrets, Rasheeda. Big ones. And I've got proof." Gasps ripped through the audience. Cameras zoomed in tight on Rasheeda's face, twisting from shock to pure rage. Her chest heaved, tears of betrayal already glistening in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You better stop playing with me, Yandy," she snarled, voice low and dangerous. "Because if you're lying, I swear to God." But Yandy wasn't backing down. She slid her phone across the table, screen glowing with messages that made Rasheeda's jaw drop. The cast froze. Friends who had just been laughing moments ago now stared in horror. This wasn't just shade. This was war. Rasheeda shot up from her seat so fast the chair flew backward, pointing a trembling finger straight at Yandy. "You just ruined everything," she screamed, voice breaking into a full-throated roar that echoed off the walls. Security started moving in. Kirk buried his face in his hands. And in that split second, the entire room knew the gloves were off, the secrets were out, and this reunion was about to turn deadly ugly faster than anyone could hit record. The cameras kept rolling as Rasheeda stood there shaking with pure rage, her finger still pointed directly at Yandy, who sat back with that calm but deadly confident look on her face. "You really want to go there?" Rasheeda snapped, her voice echoing through the entire studio. Audience members were leaning forward, some covering their mouths in shock. Kirk tried to stand up, but Rasheeda shoved him back. "Down hard, don't you dare touch me right now," she hissed, her eyes blazing with betrayal. "Yandy, what proof do you even have? Because if this is another one of your little games to stay relevant, I swear I'm done with all of you." The tension in the room was suffocating. Mimi sat across the table looking nervous, while Carly and Tommy exchanged wide-eyed glances. This was supposed to be a reunion to clear the air, not destroy marriages. Yandy slowly picked up her phone again and held it up for everyone to see. "These messages are from last year, Kirk," she said, her tone ice cold and steady. "While you were out there pretending to be the perfect husband, Rasheeda was building her business and trusting you. These texts prove you were sneaking around with someone close to home." Rasheeda lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, but security stepped in faster, pulling her back gently but firmly. "Let me see it," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I deserve to see what this snake is talking about." The cast was frozen. No one knew whether to intervene or let the explosion happen. Fans watching live on social media were already flooding the comments with shocked emojis and theories. Kirk finally found his voice. "Rasheeda, baby, listen to me. This is not what it looks like. Yandy is twisting everything just like she always does." But Rasheeda turned on him like a wildfire. "You have been lying to my face for years, Kirk, while I'm out here grinding for our family, for our kids, and you're texting behind my back. Who is she? Tell me right now, or I walk out of here and never look back." The room erupted in gasps as Rasheeda wiped angry tears from her face, refusing to let them fall in front of everyone. She had built her brand on strength and loyalty, and now it was all crumbling under these bombshell accusations. Yandy leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "It's not just any woman, Rasheeda, it's someone you know, someone who smiled in your face while stabbing you in the back." The entire cast leaned in, even the producers in the back were whispering this was ratings gold, but for Rasheeda it felt like her world was ending. She paced back and forth, her designer heels clicking loudly against the floor. "I gave you everything, Kirk. I defended you through every scandal, every rumor, and this is how you repay me, by making me look like a fool on national television." Her voice rose higher with every word. "Fans are going to eat this up online, but right now, in this moment, it was pure pain, raw and unfiltered." Mimi finally spoke up. "Rasheeda, maybe we should take a break before this gets worse." But Rasheeda shot her a look that could kill. "Don't tell me what to do, Mimi. You have your own mess with your baby daddy drama. Stay out of mine." Yandy smiled slightly, knowing she had hit a nerve. She dropped another detail. The Messages show meetings at hotels late nights when you thought he was working on music. Rasheeda felt her knees weaken, but she locked them, refusing to fall. She grabbed a glass of water from the table and threw it straight at Yandy, splashing her designer dress. The audience screamed in chaos. Security rushed forward, separating the two women as Yandy stood up, dripping wet. "You're crazy, Rasheeda," she yelled, but her eyes showed she had expected this reaction. Kirk was now standing between them, pleading, "Rasheeda, please let me explain in private. This is not the place." But Rasheeda laughed bitterly, a cold, broken laugh. "Oh, you want privacy after Yandy just aired our dirty laundry for the world to see? No, Kirk, we are doing this right here, right now." The family was completely divided. Some cast members sided with Rasheeda, whispering support, while others shook their heads, saying she was overreacting. Emotions ran high as old grudges from previous seasons resurfaced. Carly muttered under her breath, "This is why I stay away from married men drama." Tommy nodded, agreeing silently. The producers signaled to keep the cameras tight on Rasheeda, capturing every terror, every furious expression. This was the moment the show had been waiting for, a true meltdown that would trend for weeks. Rasheeda turned back to Yandy, her chest heaving. "You think dropping this bombshell makes you queen of the reunion? It just makes you a bitter, lonely woman who can't keep her own house in order." Yandy fired back without missing a beat. "At least my husband doesn't sneak around behind my back." Rasheeda, the room exploded again with ohs and ahs as the two women stared each other down like gladiators in a coliseum. Kirk buried his face in his hands again, knowing his secrets were now fully exposed and there was no going back. Rasheeda felt her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. All the late nights she spent alone building their empire while he was out living a double life, it all made sense now. The cancelled plans, the mysterious phone calls, the distance she had ignored for the sake of their family image, everything was crashing down around her. In this one ugly scene, she pointed at Kirk one last time before security escorted her toward the side door. "We are finished," she declared, her voice steady and final. For the first time all night, the fight seemed to leave her body, replaced by cold resolve. The cast watched in stunned silence as she walked off the stage, leaving a trail of shattered trust behind her. Yandy sat back down, adjusting her wet clothes with a satisfied smirk, knowing she had just changed the game forever. But little did anyone know this was only the beginning of an even bigger storm that would pull in their children, friends, and every loyal fan who thought they knew the real story behind Rasheeda and Kirk's picture-perfect marriage. The drama was just getting started, and Atlanta would never be the same after this night. The drama was just getting started, and Atlanta would never be the same after this night. As Rasheeda stormed off the stage, the cameras followed her every furious step, capturing the way her shoulders shook with barely contained sobs, while backstage crew scrambled to keep up with the chaos. Yandy remained seated, wiping water from her face, but her eyes sparkled with victory, knowing she had just lit the fuse on a season-long explosion. Kirk chased after Rasheeda, calling her name desperately, "Baby, wait, please, let's talk about this." But she spun around so fast her braids whipped through the air. "Talk about what, Kirk? The hotel receipts, the late-night texts, or the fact that you looked me in my eyes every single day and lied straight to my face?" Her voice echoed down the hallway, drawing more cast members out of their dressing rooms. Mimi rushed over, trying to play peacemaker. "Rasheeda, calm down. You are shaking. Let me get you some water." But Rasheeda pushed past her. "I don't need water. I need the truth, and I need it now before I lose my damn mind." The entire production team was on high alert, phones ringing with calls from executives demanding updates because this reunion was breaking records. In real time, social media was exploding with hashtags like Rasheeda snaps and Yandy drop it. Fans were divided, some calling Yandy a snake for exposing secrets, while others praised her for finally revealing the truth behind the perfect couple facade. Back on stage, the remaining cast sat in stunned silence. Carly leaned over to Tommy, whispering, "Girl, this is bigger than I thought. Kirk has been playing both sides for years." Tommy nodded, sipping her drink slowly. "I always suspected something, but not like this." The producers decided to roll tape on a private confrontation room, pulling Rasheeda and Kirk into a dimly lit space with cameras hidden in every corner. Rasheeda sat down, arms crossed, her face a mask of pure hurt and anger. "Explain yourself, Kirk, and don't you dare feed me that. It's not what it looks like." "Bullshit, because Yandy showed receipts," she said, her voice trembling but strong. Kirk paced back and forth, running his hands over his head, looking every bit the guilty man he was. "Rasheeda, I messed up, okay, I admit it, but it was one time, maybe two. I was stressed with the music and the business, and you were always so busy building your empire. I felt neglected." He reached for her hand, but she snatched it away. "Neglected, Kirk? I was building that empire for us, for our children, so we could have something real, and you repay me by sneaking around with some side piece. Who was she? Tell me her name right now." Rasheeda demanded, her eyes boring into Him like lasers. Kirk hesitated, swallowing hard. It was someone from the label, he finally muttered. One of the new artist's managers. We met at a session and things just happened. Rasheeda let out a bitter laugh. Things just happened. You're unbelievable. I defended you against every rumor, every accusation from past seasons, and this is what you do. The argument grew louder as Rasheeda stood up, knocking over a chair. Security peeked in, but the producers waved them off, wanting every raw second on camera. Meanwhile, Yandy was in another room being interviewed by a producer. I did it for Rasheeda, she claimed with fake sincerity. She deserves to know the kind of man she is married to. I can't sit there and watch her live a lie anymore. But everyone knew Yandy had her own motives, especially after her recent business disagreements with Kirk over a joint venture that went sour. The night dragged on with more twists as old friends began to weigh in on the drama. One by one, Scrappy called in via video admitting he had heard rumors about Kirk stepping out but stayed quiet out of loyalty. Now he regretted it. Man, I should have told you, Rasheeda, but I didn't want to break up the family, he said, looking guilty on the screen. Rasheeda watched from the confrontation room, tears finally streaming down her face. You all knew and no one said anything, she whispered, feeling completely betrayed by the entire circle. Even her own family was divided. When her sister called later that night, sis, maybe it's time to walk away, you deserve better, but their mother jumped in on the call. No baby, fight for your marriage. Kirk is a good man deep down, he just made a mistake. Rasheeda hung up, frustrated at how everyone had an opinion but no real solutions. The next morning, the story dominated every blog and podcast. Rasheeda wakes up to hundreds of notifications from fans sending love and support, some offering to fly out and confront Kirk themselves, but the pain was still fresh as she sat in her luxury home staring at old wedding photos, memories flooding back of happier times when Kirk promised forever and meant it, or so she thought. Yandy, meanwhile, posted a cryptic Instagram story with the caption, "Truth hurts but lies destroy," hoping to stir even more chaos online. Kirk tried calling Rasheeda dozens of times, leaving voicemails begging for forgiveness. I'm sorry baby, I will do whatever it takes, counseling, therapy, anything, just don't end us, he pleaded, but Rasheeda blocked his number, needing space to breathe. The cast group chat blew up with everyone sharing their takes. Mimi texted Rasheeda, I'm here if you need to talk away from the cameras this time. Carly added, girl, you handled that with class even when you threw that water. Tommy sent laughing emojis, but deep down the group was split. Some felt Yandy went too far, airing private business, while others believed Kirk got what he deserved. As the days turned into weeks, the drama escalated when Rasheeda decided to confront the other woman herself, tracking down the label manager through mutual connections. The meeting was explosive. In a trendy Atlanta coffee shop, Rasheeda sat across from the young, stylish woman who looked terrified. You knew he was married, right? Rasheeda asked, her voice calm but deadly. The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. It was a mistake, he said. You two were having problems and I fell for it. I'm so sorry. Rasheeda felt a mix of anger and pity, but mostly anger. You smiled in my face at events knowing what you were doing, she said, standing up and walking out without another word. The encounter left her drained but empowered. She returned home to find Kirk waiting on the doorstep with flowers and a handwritten letter. Rasheeda, please, he begged on his knees right there in the driveway. I love you more than anything. This was rock bottom for me. Let me make it right. The neighbors peeked through curtains, filming the whole thing for social media. Rasheeda stood there, torn between the man she built a life with and the pain he caused her. Kids watched from the window, confused and scared. Mommy, are you and Daddy getting a divorce? One of them asked innocently, breaking Rasheeda's heart even more. She let Kirk inside but made it clear nothing was forgiven yet. They sat down for what became the most honest conversation in years. Kirk poured out his regrets, admitting the pressure of fame, money and temptation got to him. I never wanted to hurt you, he said, crying real tears. Rasheeda listened, but her guard stayed up. We need time apart, she finally said. I need to focus on me and the kids. You figure out your mess. Meanwhile, Yandy was enjoying the spotlight, appearing on radio shows recounting the reunion blow up. I never expected it to go that left, she said, but Rasheeda deserved the truth. The interviews painted Yandy as either a hero or a villain depending on who you asked, and the fanbase was more divided than ever. Some started boycotting her projects, while others praised her courage. Back in the love and hip-hop world, producers were already planning the next episode around this fallout, scheduling solo interviews and group mediations that promised even more fireworks. Rasheeda agreed to film a solo scene in her boutique, pouring her heart out to the camera. I built this brand with blood, sweat and tears while holding my family together, and now I feel like a fool, but I'm stronger than this drama, she declared, looking directly into the lens with fire in her eyes. Her vulnerability turned into strength, inspiring thousands of women online who shared their own cheating stories, using her as a voice for healing. Kirk, on the other hand, Filmed his confessional looking disheveled and remorseful. "I let my ego ruin the best thing I ever had," he admitted, "but I'm willing to fight for my wife if she will have me." The episode ended with a teaser of Rasheeda and Yandy coming face to face again in a neutral setting, promising another ugly showdown. Fans waited anxiously, refreshing their feeds for any update. The entire Atlanta cast felt the ripple effects as friendships strained and alliances shifted. Tommy distanced herself from Yandy, saying she crossed a line, while Mimi tried playing mediator again, hosting a secret lunch that went horribly wrong when old secrets about other cast members surfaced, escalating the mess even further. Rasheeda received support from unexpected places, like former rivals who reached out privately reminding her she was a boss and didn't need anyone dimming her light. This wave of encouragement gave her the courage to file separation papers, though she hadn't served them yet, keeping Kirk in suspense as he desperately tried winning her back with grand gestures like sending flowers to her store daily and showing up at her events with their children as a united front. But Rasheeda saw through the moves. Focusing instead on therapy and self-care, her glow-up became the talk of the town, with new hairstyles, business launches, and subtle shade posts that had everyone speculating. Yandy tried to apologize via text, but Rasheeda left her on read, refusing to give her the satisfaction. The tension built toward another major confrontation at a charity event where both women were scheduled to appear. The room went silent when they locked eyes across the ballroom. Security braced for round two, but Rasheeda simply smiled and raised her glass in a mock toast to truth and consequences, leaving Yandy fuming. The night ended with Kirk pulling Rasheeda aside for a private moment on the balcony. "I miss my wife," he whispered. "The real you, not this angry version." Rasheeda looked at him long and hard, remembering the good times, but the pain was still too fresh. "Maybe one day, but not today," she replied, walking away with her head high. The saga continued, pulling in lawyers, business partners, and even celebrity friends who offered advice from afar, keeping the story alive in headlines for months. Each new development added layers of emotion, betrayal, and resilience as Rasheeda transformed from heartbroken wife to empowered icon. While Kirk fought to redeem himself and Yandy navigated the backlash from her bombshell, the family remained divided. Friends chose sides and fans debated endlessly online, wondering if the marriage could survive or if this was truly the end of an era in love and hip-hop history. The drama showed no signs of slowing down, with more secrets threatening to spill and emotions running higher than ever before in the city of Atlanta, where fame, love, and lies collided in the most spectacular way possible. The drama showed no signs of slowing down, with more secrets threatening to spill and emotions running higher than ever before in the city of Atlanta, where fame, love, and lies collided in the most spectacular way possible. As weeks turned into months, Rasheeda threw herself deeper into her business empire, launching new collections that sold out overnight, while fans praised her resilience online, calling her the ultimate boss queen who refused to let a man break her spirit. Kirk, on the other hand, grew more desperate, sending daily gifts and showing up unannounced at her events with their children in tow, hoping the family image would melt her heart. "Mommy, please talk to Daddy." One of the kids begged during a tense dinner that Kirk had orchestrated. Rasheeda felt her resolve cracking, but she held firm. "We need real change, not these photo ops," she told him later that night in a quiet corner of their once shared home. Kirk nodded, tears in his eyes. "I am changing, baby. I went to therapy twice this week and I even cut ties with everyone from that label completely." But just as Rasheeda started to soften, Yandy dropped yet another bombshell, this time on a live Instagram session. "I held back before," she confessed to thousands of viewers, "but there is more. Kirk wasn't just texting, he had a whole second phone, and I have the bank statements to prove the transfers to secret accounts." Rasheeda watched the live in horror, her phone shaking in her hands as comments flooded in with fire emojis and shocked faces. She immediately called her lawyer, filing for formal separation. The next morning, the news hit every blog and gossip site like wildfire. "Rasheeda files for separation after Yandy exposes more Kirk secrets," headlines screamed, while fans split into camps, some trending justice for Rasheeda and others claiming Yandy was destroying the culture by airing dirty laundry in public. Mimi tried intervening again, hosting a cast dinner that was supposed to bring peace, but it backfired spectacularly when Tommy confronted Yandy directly. "You went too far, sis," she said, slamming her glass down. "This ain't about truth, this is about you staying relevant." Yandy shot back, "At least I ain't covering for cheaters like some people." The argument escalated into screaming matches, old grudges From previous seasons resurfacing, Carly sided with Rasheeda, quietly texting her support, while Scrappy went live defending Kirk, saying men make mistakes but real ones own up. The entire Love and Hip Hop family was torn apart, with alliances shifting daily. Producers capitalized on the chaos, scheduling an emergency reunion special promising even bigger reveals. Rasheeda arrived looking flawless in a power suit, her head high despite the pain. Kirk walked in separately, avoiding eye contact, but the tension was electric from the first second cameras rolled. Yandy, what else do you know? Rasheeda demanded, leaning forward, her voice steady but filled with fire. Yandy hesitated for dramatic effect, then dropped the ultimate twist. It wasn't just one woman, Kirk. There was a whole situation in Miami during that music festival. You told Rasheeda you were working. The room exploded again, with cast members gasping and producers smiling behind the scenes. This was pure gold. Kirk jumped up, denying it wildly. That never happened. Yandy, you were making stuff up to hurt me. But Rasheeda saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes, and she knew deep down it was true. She stood slowly, her hands planted on the table. You took me for granted, Kirk. You took our vows and our family and you threw it all away for what? Temporary thrills. And now you expect me to forgive and forget no more, she declared, walking off set once again, but this time with a quiet dignity that earned her millions of new followers. The fallout was massive. Rasheeda moved into a new luxury condo overlooking the city, pouring her energy into single motherhood and brand deals, while Kirk checked into a wellness retreat, trying to salvage his reputation through apology videos that fans mostly roasted online. Yandy faced backlash, too, with several sponsors dropping her and cast members distancing themselves publicly. You crossed a line that should never be crossed, Mimi told her during a tense phone call that leaked online. The drama pulled in extended family. Rasheeda's mother flew in from out of town, pleading for reconciliation. He is the father of your children, baby. Don't throw it all away. But Rasheeda stood her ground. I am protecting my peace, mama, and my kids deserve a mother who loves herself enough to walk away. Her sister supported her fully, organizing girls' nights filled with laughter and empowerment, while Kirk spiraled, posting cryptic songs about lost love that everyone knew were about her. The children became the heartbreaking center of it all, caught between parents who still loved each other but coexist. The oldest asked Rasheeda one night, Mommy, do you still love Daddy? She paused, tears welling up. Love is complicated, baby, but right now I love me more, and that is okay. The saga continued when a mysterious source leaked old videos of Kirk at parties looking too close with multiple women. Rasheeda saw them and felt the wound reopen fresh. She confronted him one final time in a raw, unfiltered scene filmed for the show. How many more lies, Kirk? How many more women? He broke down completely on his knees. I was lost, Rasheeda. I let fame change me, but you were my anchor. Please give us one last chance. The cast watched via monitor, some crying, others shaking their heads at the sheer mess of it all. Yandy later apologized in a private meeting with Rasheeda. I went about it wrong, she admitted, but I truly thought you deserved to know. Rasheeda accepted the apology coldly. We are even now, but trust is gone forever. The two women hugged awkwardly for the cameras, but the ice between them remained thick as ever as the season wrapped. Producers hinted at spin-offs focused on Rasheeda's new chapter and Kirk's redemption arc. Fans begged for more, demanding updates daily. Rasheeda launched a podcast sharing her journey with honesty and humor, inspiring women everywhere to choose themselves first. Kirk started a foundation for troubled artists, hoping to turn his mistakes into lessons while quietly sending flowers and notes that Rasheeda sometimes read with a bittersweet smile. The city of Atlanta buzzed with the story for months, with billboards and radio segments keeping the fire alive. Unexpected allies emerged like former rivals who reached out, offering business partnerships and emotional support. Rasheeda found strength in sisterhood, launching women empowerment events that sold out instantly. Her glow-up was undeniable: new confidence, radiant skin, and unapologetic ambition, making her a beacon for anyone who had ever been betrayed. Yet the unresolved questions lingered. Would Kirk truly change, or was this another cycle of promises? Would Rasheeda ever fully trust again, or had the bombshell permanently shattered their bond? How would the children navigate the new normal, and where did Yandy fit in the future of the franchise? The drama refused to die, with every new sighting of the couple sparking rumors of secret meetings or final goodbyes. Fans stayed glued to their screens, refreshing for any crumb of information. Emotions ran higher than ever as Love and Hip Hop delivered its most explosive season yet, leaving everyone wondering if broken hearts could truly mend, or if this ugly chapter marked the Definitive end of one of television's most watched marriages. The twists kept coming when a surprise pregnancy rumor surfaced about one of the women from Kirk's past, threatening to destroy any hope of reconciliation. Rasheeda faced it head-on in a tearful confessional. "I have cried enough. Now I am choosing power, and if that means walking alone, then so be it." Her strength resonated globally, turning her into a cultural icon, while Kirk fought legal battles and public perception, trying desperately to win back the woman he never stopped loving. The entire cast became commentators on their own lives, with interviews dissecting every detail and predicting outcomes. The family remained fractured but healing slowly through therapy sessions and honest talks that cameras sometimes captured for added rawness. Rasheeda discovered new passions, traveling and mentoring young entrepreneurs, finding joy outside the chaos. Yandy reflected on her role, realizing that truth without compassion could wound deeply, and vowed to handle future situations differently. Kirk hit rock bottom, then slowly climbed back, writing music that poured out his regrets and growth. The story of betrayal and resilience captivated audiences worldwide, proving that in the world of reality television, nothing stayed hidden forever, and every bombshell led to either destruction or powerful rebirths. In Atlanta, the lights stayed bright, the cameras kept rolling, and the hearts kept breaking and mending in the most dramatic ways imaginable, keeping fans on the edge of their seats for what would come next in this never-ending saga of love, lies, and unbreakable spirits. The fallout from the shocking pregnancy rumor sent tremors through every corner of their already fractured world as blogs raced to uncover the identity of the alleged woman, and fans dissected every frame of past episodes, searching for clues, while Rasheeda sat in her condo staring out over the Atlanta skyline, her reflection in the glass looking like a completely different woman than the one who had once defended her marriage with unshakable loyalty. Now there was steel in her eyes, a quiet, unbreakable resolve that no amount of gossip could crack. Her phone buzzed non-stop, messages from producers, friends, even strangers offering opinions, but she silenced it all, needing a moment to think, to breathe, to exist without the noise. Kirk, meanwhile, was unraveling in a way no one had seen before. The confident, smooth-talking persona he carried for years was gone, replaced by a man pacing empty rooms, replaying every mistake like a broken record. He tried reaching out again, sending a long message that read, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know I finally understand what I destroyed, and am willing to spend the rest of my life proving I can be better." But Rasheeda didn't respond, not this time, not anymore. She had moved past words into a space where only actions mattered, and even then she wasn't sure if any action could undo the damage that had been done. The children became her anchor, their laughter, their innocence, the only thing keeping her grounded as the storm raged around them. She poured herself into being present, helping with homework, cooking dinners, creating a sense of normalcy in a life that had been anything but normal lately. Yet even in those quiet moments, questions lingered in the back of her mind. Could she ever trust again? Not just Kirk, but anyone. The betrayal had cut so deep it reshaped her entire understanding of love and loyalty. Meanwhile, the alleged pregnancy rumor began to unravel when the woman at the center of it finally spoke out in an exclusive interview, claiming there was no baby but admitting there had been a deeper involvement with Kirk than previously revealed. The admission reignited the firestorm. Online fans felt vindicated, others furious that the truth kept evolving like layers of a never-ending scandal. Rasheeda watched the interview in silence, her expression unreadable, but inside something shifted, not pain, not even anger, but clarity, the final piece of a puzzle she no longer wanted to solve. She stood up, walked to her closet, and began packing, not in a frantic, emotional way, but with calm precision. Each folded piece of clothing, each placed item, a step toward a new chapter. She called her lawyer and gave the go-ahead, served the papers, her voice steady, unwavering. This was no longer a question of if, but when, and the answer was now. Kirk received the papers while sitting in his car outside a studio. The envelope felt heavier than anything he had ever held, his hands trembling as he opened it, reading the words that confirmed what he had feared most. This was real, this was final, this was the consequence of every choice he had made. He leaned back, closing his eyes, letting the weight of it all crash over him. No cameras, no audience, just a man facing the reality of losing everything that ever truly mattered to him. The news spread instantly, headlines confirming the official separation, fans reacting with a mix of heartbreak and support for Rasheeda, who had become a symbol of strength in the face of betrayal, while Kirk faced a harsher narrative, one of regret, missed chances, and public accountability. Yandy found herself pulled back into the conversation, her name trending again as people debated whether her actions had accelerated the inevitable or unnecessarily destroyed something that might have been salvageable. She went live once more, this time without the usual edge in her tone. "I never wanted it to go this far," she admitted, looking directly into the camera, "but sometimes truth Doesn't just set you free, sometimes it burns everything down. First, her words sparked another wave of debate, but for the first time she seemed less like a provocateur and more like someone grappling with the consequences of her own choices. Mimi reached out to both sides, trying once again to bridge a gap that now felt like a canyon, but even she could sense this was different. This wasn't another fight, another scandal to be smoothed over with apologies in time. This was an ending, and endings didn't always come with closure or reconciliation. Sometimes they just came with acceptance. Rasheeda moved forward with quiet determination, launching new projects, expanding her brand, stepping into spaces she once hesitated to claim, her story resonating far beyond reality television, inspiring conversations about self-worth, boundaries, and the courage it takes to walk away from something familiar but broken. Kirk, on the other hand, disappeared from the spotlight for a while, focusing on therapy, rebuilding himself away from the noise. Those closest to him said he was different, more reflective, less defensive, but whether that change would last or matter remained to be seen. The children adjusted in their own way, learning to navigate two homes, two versions of family still filled with love but undeniably changed. Their resilience became a testament to the strength both parents still shared despite everything, and as months passed the intensity of the headlines began to fade, replaced by new stories, new dramas, but the impact of what had happened lingered, shaping not just their lives but the narrative of everyone who had watched it unfold. Rasheeda stood one evening at the opening of her newest venture, surrounded by supporters, cameras flashing, but this time the energy was different. It wasn't about scandal or sympathy, it was about success, independence, and a woman reclaiming her story on her own terms. She gave a short speech thanking those who stood by her, then paused, looking out at the crowd with a small knowing smile. Sometimes losing what you thought was everything is the only way to find out who you really are, and with that she stepped down into a future no longer defined by betrayal but by possibility. While somewhere across the city, Kirk watched from a distance, not physically present but aware of the moment, understanding that some chapters don't get rewritten, they simply end, and the only thing left to do is learn from the story they told. In the weeks that followed that defining moment, the city seemed to move on, but for Rasheeda time slowed into something heavier, more deliberate. Each decision she made now carried intention, every step forward carefully placed, as if she were rebuilding not just her life but her identity from the ground up. She no longer rushed to answer calls, no longer felt obligated to explain herself to anyone who hadn't stood in her corner when everything fell apart. Instead, she curated her space, her energy, her circle with precision. The boutique became more than just a business, it turned into her sanctuary, a place where she could channel her emotions into creativity. Late nights, catching designs turned into early morning launches, and every collection seemed to tell a story of resilience, of reclaiming power, of redefining what it meant to be whole. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost was learning that redemption was not something you could rush or demand. It was something you earned slowly, painfully, and often without guarantee. He kept his distance, respecting the boundary she had drawn, but that distance came with its own kind of torment. Every milestone she reached without him, every success she celebrated alone, was a reminder of what he had lost. He threw himself into therapy, into self-reflection, into understanding the patterns that had led him to sabotage the very thing he claimed to value most. There were no cameras documenting this part, no dramatic confessionals, just quiet and comfortable truths, and the long road of accountability that came with them. Across town, Yandy Smith found herself in an unfamiliar position, no longer the one controlling the narrative but instead reacting to the backlash that continued to ripple from her actions. Invitations slowed, endorsements hesitated, and conversations about her name often carried a tone she wasn't used to. She tried to reposition herself, focusing on philanthropy, on business ventures that highlighted empowerment, but the shadow of that reunion moment lingered, a reminder that even truth delivered without care could have consequences that echoed far beyond the initial impact. Mimi Faust stayed quietly supportive, maintaining her role as a steady presence in a world that had become anything but stable. She visited Rasheeda often, sometimes just sitting in silence, sometimes talking through the complexities of love and betrayal, her own experiences, giving her a perspective that was both empathetic and grounded. She never pushed, never judged, just reminded Rasheeda that healing didn't have a timeline and that strength didn't always look like moving on. Sometimes it looked like standing still and allowing yourself to feel everything fully. Carly Red and Tommy Lee remained on the periphery, their commentary now more cautious, their involvement less direct. They had seen how quickly things could escalate, how one moment could shift everything, and while they still had opinions, they chose to keep them quieter, observing rather than inserting themselves into a situation that had already taken on a life of its own. Lil Scrappy occasionally checked in with Kirk, offering a mix of tough love and Brotherly support reminding him that growth wasn't about grand gestures, it was about consistency, about showing up differently every single day even when no one was watching. And as time stretched on, the narrative that once felt explosive began to settle into something more reflective, less about the scandal itself and more about what came after, the rebuilding, the redefining, the quiet moments that didn't make headlines but mattered just as much. Rasheeda began exploring new opportunities outside of her usual lane, stepping into speaking engagements, mentoring young women, sharing pieces of her journey not as a victim but as someone who had faced something difficult and chosen to rise differently. Each room she entered carried a different energy. People listened not because of the drama they had watched unfold, but because of the authenticity she now embodied. She didn't pretend to have all the answers. She didn't wrap her story in a perfect ending. Instead, she spoke about the messiness of it all, the doubt, the anger, the clarity that eventually followed, and in doing so, she created space for others to confront their own truths. Kirk watched these developments from afar, sometimes with pride, sometimes with regret, always with the understanding that he was no longer a central part of her story, but rather a chapter within it. He continued his own work, quietly building something more stable within himself, focusing on being present for his children, on creating a version of himself that wasn't defined by past mistakes but informed by them. Whether or not that version would ever be enough to repair what had been broken remained an open question, one that time alone would answer. The children adapted in ways that both impressed and broke the hearts of those around them, their resilience a reflection of the love both parents still poured into them. Despite everything, they learned to navigate two worlds, to understand that family didn't always look the same as it once did but could still hold meaning, could still be a source of comfort even in its new form. Holidays or different birthdays carried a subtle tension but also a shared effort to keep things joyful, to ensure that the weight of adult decisions didn't overshadow the innocence that children deserved. And as the seasons changed, the story that had once dominated conversations slowly transformed into something quieter, more introspective, no longer driven by explosive reveals or heated confrontations but by the steady unfolding of lives moving forward in their own ways. Rasheeda stood one afternoon in her boutique, watching customers browse, laughing with her team, feeling a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. It wasn't the loud, triumphant kind of peace that comes with dramatic resolutions. It was softer, more grounded, the kind that settles in when you finally stop fighting what is and start embracing what could be. She glanced at her reflection, catching a glimpse of the woman she had become, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't see loss. She saw evolution. Kirk, in a separate part of the city, sat in a studio, not working on music but simply sitting in the silence, allowing himself to exist without distraction, without escape. He thought about everything that had happened, not with the desperation to change it, but with the understanding that some things are meant to teach rather than be undone. He picked up a notebook, jotting down thoughts, not lyrics, not for an audience, but for himself, a way to process, to document the journey he was now on. Yandy continued navigating her own path, learning in real time how to balance honesty with empathy, how to speak truth without weaponizing it. She engaged in conversations that challenged her perspective, that forced her to confront the impact of her choices in ways she hadn't fully considered before. Mimi remained a quiet anchor. Carly and Tommy found their own narratives, shifting away from the chaos. Scrappy focused on growth in his own life, and the world kept turning as it always does. But for those at the center of this story, everything had changed in ways that couldn't be undone, only understood. And as the months turned into a year, the question of what might happen next became less urgent, less consuming, replaced by a quieter curiosity about who they were all becoming in the aftermath. Because in the end, it wasn't just about what had been broken, it was about what could be rebuilt, not necessarily together but individually, stronger, wiser, more aware of the complexities that come with love, trust, and the choices that shape both. And in that space of uncertainty and growth, each of them continued forward, writing new chapters, not defined by the chaos of the past but by the possibilities that still lay ahead, even if those possibilities looked nothing like what they had once imagined. As another year quietly unfolded, the intensity of everything that had once defined their lives faded into something more distant, yet never entirely gone, like an echo that lingered in the background of every new experience. Rasheeda found herself standing at the intersection of who she had been and who she was still becoming, no longer weighed down by the need to prove anything to anyone. She moved with a calm confidence that spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. Her days were filled with purpose, expanding her businesses, stepping into new ventures that reflected her growth, and investing time into spaces that nurtured her peace rather than disrupted it. She began traveling more, taking moments for herself in ways she had never allowed before, walking along quiet beaches, sitting in Sunlit cafes journaling thoughts that once felt too heavy to even acknowledge, each experience adding another layer to a version of herself that was no longer defined by survival but by intention and choice. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost continued on his own path, one marked by a quieter kind of transformation, the kind that doesn't come with applause or validation but requires consistency and patience. He focused on rebuilding trust where he could, starting with his role as a father, showing up in ways that were steady, reliable, and genuine. The absence of the relationship he once had with Rasheeda remained a constant reminder of what he had lost, but it also became a motivator, pushing him to become someone who would never repeat those same mistakes again. Whether that redemption would ever be fully recognized or accepted was no longer the driving force behind his actions. It was simply about becoming better, because he understood now what it meant to fall short in ways that truly mattered. Across the broader circle, Yandy Smith had taken significant steps to reshape her narrative, leaning into conversations around accountability and growth. She began using her platform to discuss the complexity of truth and timing, acknowledging openly that while her intentions may have stemmed from a place of honesty, the way she chose to reveal everything carried consequences she hadn't fully anticipated. Her willingness to reflect publicly didn't erase what had happened, but it did shift the conversation, creating space for nuance in a story that had once felt purely explosive. Mimi Faust remained a steady presence, not just in Rasheeda's life but within the entire circle, offering perspective when emotions ran high and reminding everyone that healing was rarely linear. Her own journey had taught her the importance of patience, and she carried that wisdom into every interaction, becoming a quiet source of strength that didn't demand attention but was deeply felt by those around her. Carly Red and Tommy Lee found themselves evolving as well, stepping away from constant conflict and leaning more into their individual growth, focusing on personal goals, relationships, and a sense of stability that had often been overshadowed by drama in the past. Lil Scrappy continued to bridge gaps where he could, offering support without overstepping, understanding that sometimes the best way to help was simply to be present without trying to fix everything. As the group dynamic shifted into something less volatile, more reflective, the story that had once dominated headlines transformed into something more meaningful, a case study in how people navigate betrayal, accountability, and change over time. Rasheeda, in particular, became a symbol of what it looks like to rebuild, not just externally but internally. She began hosting workshops and speaking engagements centered around empowerment, sharing insights not from a place of perfection but from lived experience. She spoke openly about the challenges of letting go, the fear that comes with starting over, and the strength required to choose yourself even when it feels unfamiliar. Her honesty resonated deeply, creating connections that extended far beyond the world of television into real communities of people seeking guidance and inspiration. Kirk observed these developments with a mix of emotions, pride in her growth, and a quiet acceptance that their journeys were now separate but still intertwined through shared history and family. He no longer attempted grand gestures or dramatic attempts at reconciliation. Instead, he focused on maintaining respect, honoring boundaries, and continuing his own process of self-improvement. The relationship between them evolved into something more measured. Co-parenting conversations became more constructive, less charged with emotion, centered around what was best for their children rather than what had gone wrong between them. Moments of tension still arose, as they naturally would, but they were handled with a level of maturity that reflected how much both had changed. The children themselves grew into this new reality with a resilience that continued to inspire those around them. They learned that love could exist in different forms, that family could adapt, and that stability didn't always mean sameness. Their ability to find joy in the midst of change became a powerful reminder that even in situations shaped by conflict, there was still room for growth and connection. As time continued its steady progression, the intensity of past events softened into lessons rather than wounds. Rasheeda found herself one evening reflecting on everything that had happened, not with pain but with a sense of understanding. She recognized how each moment had contributed to the person she had become, how even the most difficult experiences had pushed her toward a deeper awareness of her own worth. She no longer viewed the past as something to regret but as something that had shaped her resilience, her clarity, her unwavering sense of self. Kirk, in his own space, experienced similar reflections, acknowledging the ways in which his actions had altered the course of his life and using that awareness to guide his choices moving forward. He understood now that growth was not about erasing the past but about learning from it in a way that ensured it would not be repeated. Yandy continued to navigate her role within the narrative, balancing her desire to speak truth with a growing understanding of the importance of empathy. Her journey became one of learning how to hold both honesty and compassion simultaneously, recognizing That one without the other could lead to unintended harm. Mimi remained a grounding force. Carly and Tommy embraced new directions. Scrappy continued offering support where needed, and the collective dynamic settled into something that felt less like a constant storm and more like a group of individuals, each on their own path, occasionally intersecting but no longer defined by shared chaos. The city of Atlanta itself seemed to carry on as it always had, vibrant, fast-moving, full of stories unfolding in every corner, but for those who had lived through this particular chapter, the experience left a lasting imprint, shaping how they approached relationships, trust, and personal growth moving forward. And as another chapter began to take form, the focus shifted away from what had been lost and toward what was being created: new opportunities, new connections, new understandings of what it meant to build a life that aligned with who they had become rather than who they once were. Rasheeda stood at the center of the transformation, not as someone who had simply endured hardship, but as someone who had used it as a catalyst for change, her journey no longer tied to a single narrative but expanding into something far greater, a testament to the idea that even the most painful endings can lead to powerful new beginnings if you are willing to embrace them fully and step into the unknown with courage and conviction. While Kirk continued his own journey, quietly, steadily redefining himself in ways that may never fully undo the past but could shape a more intentional future. And as their stories continued to unfold separately yet still connected by shared history, the question was no longer about whether things could return to what they once were, but about how each of them would continue to grow into who they were meant to be, beyond the chaos, beyond the headlines, beyond the version of themselves that had once been defined by a single moment of truth finally brought into the light. As the next phase of their lives unfolded with a quieter but deeper intensity, Rasheeda began to experience something unfamiliar: not pain, not anger, but a steady sense of control over her own narrative that no outside voice could shake anymore. Her mornings started earlier now, not out of stress but out of purpose. She would wake before the city fully stirred, sit by the window with coffee in hand, and map out her day with clarity that once felt impossible. The chaos that used to define her routine had been replaced with structure, intention, and most importantly, peace. She expanded her business ventures beyond what anyone expected, stepping into partnerships that elevated her brand globally. Her name was no longer tied primarily to reality television drama, but to entrepreneurship, resilience, and leadership. Women from different backgrounds began reaching out, not just as fans but as students eager to learn from her journey. She embraced that role, carefully understanding the weight of influence and choosing to lead with honesty rather than perfection. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost continued navigating the long road of accountability, but now there was less desperation in his steps and more acceptance. He had stopped trying to rewrite the past and instead focused on building something meaningful in the present. His relationship with his children grew stronger, grounded in consistency and presence rather than promises. He showed up to school events, helped with daily routines, and made an effort to create moments that mattered without expecting recognition for them. The absence of Rasheeda in his personal life remained a quiet ache, but it no longer controlled him. It guided him, reminding him daily of the importance of integrity, of honesty, of showing up fully in every space he entered. Across the social landscape, Yandy Smith found herself continuing to evolve in ways that surprised even her closest circle. She leaned into advocacy work, using her platform to highlight issues beyond entertainment, focusing on community building, mentorship, and creating opportunities for others to grow. Her experience had taught her that visibility came with responsibility, and she began to approach her voice with more care, more awareness of its impact. She still faced criticism, still encountered moments where her past decisions were brought back into the spotlight, but she handled them differently. Now choosing reflection over reaction, understanding that growth often meant sitting with discomfort rather than deflecting it. Mimi Fast remained the quiet glue that occasionally held conversations together. When tensions resurfaced, she hosted small gatherings, not for cameras, not for drama, but for connection, spaces where honest conversations could happen without performance. Her presence reminded everyone that relationships could evolve without completely breaking, that even in the aftermath of betrayal there could still be moments of understanding, even if full reconciliation was never the goal. Carly Red and Tommy Lee found new footing as well, their lives less centered around conflict and more focused on personal stability. They pursued business ventures, creative projects, and relationships that reflected their own growth, stepping away from the patterns that once kept them entangled in unnecessary chaos. Lil Scrappy continued to offer perspective when needed, but had also learned to respect boundaries, understanding that not every situation required intervention. Sometimes support looked like silence, like simply being present without trying to steer the outcome. As time moved forward, the narrative that once defined all of them shifted into something more layered, less about singular moments of betrayal and more about the ongoing process of becoming. Rasheeda, in particular, began exploring aspects of herself she had long put aside. She took classes in areas that interested her, engaged in creative pursuits that had nothing to do with business or public perception, and allowed herself the freedom to exist outside of expectations. She formed new friendships with people who knew her not for her past but for who she was in the present, and those connections felt lighter, more genuine, unburdened by history or assumption. One evening, at an intimate event celebrating her latest business milestone, she found herself in conversation with individuals who spoke to her vision, her ambition, her ideas rather than her personal life, and for the first time in a long time she felt fully seen in a way that had nothing to do with the narrative that once followed her. Kirk, in his own world, experienced moments of quiet realization, understanding that growth was not about proving something to others but about aligning with a version of himself he could respect. He spent more time alone, not out of isolation but out of intention, using that space to reflect, to plan, to build a foundation that was not dependent on external validation. His journey remained largely private, but those who interacted with him noticed the difference: a calmer demeanor, a more thoughtful approach to conversations, a willingness to listen rather than defend. Yandy continued balancing her public and personal evolution, learning how to navigate spaces where she was both celebrated and critiqued. She became more selective about what she shared, more intentional about how she engaged, recognizing that not every truth needed to be broadcast to have value. Mimi maintained her role as a steady presence. Carly and Tommy continued building lives that reflected their growth. Scrappy remained a supportive figure, and the collective dynamic settled into something that felt less like a constant storm and more like a series of individual journeys, occasionally intersecting but no longer defined by shared chaos. The children grew older, adapting naturally to the rhythm of their new reality, their understanding of family expanding beyond traditional definitions. They learned to appreciate the stability both parents provided in different ways, and their ability to thrive became one of the most meaningful outcomes of everything that had happened. As another season of life approached, Rasheeda stood once again at a point of reflection, not because she was searching for answers but because she recognized how far she had come. She thought about the woman she used to be, the battles she had fought, the lessons she had learned, and felt a sense of gratitude, not for the pain itself but for the strength it had revealed within her. She no longer questioned her decisions, no longer wondered if she had made the right choice. She knew she had, because she could feel it in the way she lived, in the way she moved, in the way she existed, without fear of losing herself again. Kirk continued forward with his own sense of purpose, no longer trying to reclaim what was lost but focused on honoring what remained and building something new from that foundation. His journey was not about redemption in the eyes of others but about integrity in his own life. Yandy carried her lessons with her. Mimi remained a grounding force. Carly and Tommy embraced their growth. Scrappy continued offering support, and the story that had once been defined by explosive revelations and public fallout transformed into something far more meaningful, a testament to the complexity of human relationships, the possibility of growth, and the understanding that even in the aftermath of broken trust, life continues, not in the way it once was but in the way it is meant to be, shaped by experience, guided by intention, and driven by the quiet but powerful decision to keep moving forward no matter what came before. As time stretched even further into a future none of them could have imagined, during those explosive moments Rasheeda began to step into a version of herself that felt almost unrecognizable in the best possible way. Her confidence was no longer reactive, no longer built on proving strength in the face of adversity, but instead rooted in a deep, unshakable understanding of her own value. She had stopped looking over her shoulder at what was lost and instead fixed her gaze firmly on what she was building ahead. Her businesses expanded into new territories, her voice carried into spaces that once felt out of reach, and her presence commanded respect without effort. She became a mentor not just in name but in action, guiding other women through the complexities of balancing ambition, personal growth, and emotional healing. Her story evolved from something people watched unfold into something people actively learned from and applied to their own lives. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost continued to navigate the long road of personal transformation, but now there was a steadiness to him that hadn't existed before. The impulsive decisions, the need for validation, the patterns that once defined his behavior had been replaced with a more grounded approach to life. He focused on consistency, showing up for his children, maintaining boundaries, respecting the space that Rasheeda had claimed for herself, and while there were still moments where the weight of his past choices surfaced, he met them with reflection rather than avoidance, understanding that growth was not a destination but an ongoing process that required continuous effort. Yandy Smith found herself fully embracing the lessons that had come from her role in everything that had unfolded. She became more intentional with her words, more thoughtful in her actions, and more aware of the impact that truth delivered without care could have. She leaned into advocacy, mentorship, and creating opportunities for others to grow, using her platform to highlight stories that mattered beyond entertainment. Her journey became one of balance, learning how to stand in her truth while also holding space for empathy and understanding. Mimi Faust remained a constant source of calm within the ever-evolving dynamic, her presence a reminder that not every situation required intensity. Sometimes, what people needed most was a steady voice, a listening ear, and the reassurance that healing did not have to be rushed. Carly Red and Tommy Lee continued building lives that reflected their growth, stepping further away from the chaos that once defined their interactions and focusing on creating stability in both their personal and professional endeavors. Lil Scrappy maintained his role as a supportive presence, offering perspective when needed but also understanding the importance of allowing people to navigate their own journeys without interference. As the group dynamic settled into something more mature, more reflective, the intensity that once surrounded them faded into the background, replaced by a sense of individual purpose, each person moving forward on their own path, occasionally intersecting but no longer bound by the same cycles of conflict. Rasheeda in particular found herself exploring new dimensions of her identity. She ventured into creative spaces that had nothing to do with her past experiences, allowing herself to rediscover passions that had been overshadowed by years of responsibility and public scrutiny. She took time to travel, to experience different cultures, to step outside of the environment that had once felt all consuming, and in doing so she gained a broader perspective on life, one that reinforced her belief that growth often required stepping beyond familiarity. She formed new relationships built on mutual respect, shared values, and a genuine understanding of who she was in the present rather than who she had been in the past. These connections felt different, lighter, more aligned with the life she was now creating. Kirk in his own journey reached a point where he no longer measured his progress against the possibility of reconciliation. He accepted that some chapters close permanently and that closure does not always come in the form of resolution with another person but rather in the peace you find within yourself. He focused on building a life that reflected the lessons he had learned, investing in his personal development, strengthening his role as a father, and creating a foundation that was rooted in honesty and accountability. His transformation was not loud, not performative, but those who knew him could see the difference in the way he carried himself, in the way he approached relationships, in the way he made decisions. Yandy continued to evolve, balancing her public persona with a deeper sense of responsibility. She became more selective about what she shared, more mindful of how she engaged, and more committed to using her platform in ways that contributed positively to the communities she was part of. Mimi remained a grounding force. Carly and Tommy embraced their growth. Scrappy continued offering support, and the collective narrative shifted into something that felt less like a dramatic storyline and more like a reflection of real life, complex, layered, and constantly evolving. The children grew older, navigating their own paths, shaped by the experiences they had witnessed but not defined by them. They developed a sense of resilience and understanding of relationships, and a capacity for empathy that came from seeing both the challenges and the growth within their family. As another chapter of life unfolded, Rasheeda stood in a place of quiet fulfillment, not because everything was perfect but because she had reached a point where she trusted herself completely. She trusted her decisions, her instincts, her ability to navigate whatever came next. She no longer feared uncertainty because she had proven to herself that she could rebuild from even the most difficult circumstances. Kirk continued forward with a similar sense of acceptance, no longer trying to undo the past but focused on ensuring that his future was shaped by the lessons he had learned. Yandy carried her experiences with her, using them as a foundation for continued growth. Mimi remained steady. Carly and Tommy thrived in their own ways. Scrappy stayed supportive, and the story that had once captivated audiences with its intensity transformed into something far more meaningful, a testament to the power of growth, the importance of accountability, and the understanding that even in the aftermath of broken trust, life does not end. It evolves, it expands, it offers new opportunities for connection, for purpose, for self-discovery, and as each of them continued to move forward, they did so with a Deeper awareness of who they were, what they valued, and how they wanted to live their lives, no longer defined by a single moment of chaos, but by the choices they made in the quiet moments that followed, where real change truly happens and where the future is shaped not by what was lost but by what is intentionally built, moving forward step by step, day by day, into a life that reflects not just survival but genuine transformation and lasting growth. If you've been hooked on this story, make sure you don't miss what comes next, because in the world of love and hip-hop, Atlanta, the drama is never truly over. Hit like if you're Team Rasheeda and believe she chose her peace. Comment below. Would you forgive Kirk Frost after everything? Or walk away for good? And don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories, exclusive breakdowns, and behind-the-scenes tea you won't hear anywhere else. Because trust me, this story, it's still unfolding.